Welcome. This is Mystery Monday, and I am Sarah Altair. So, thank you for joining us today. This is where we talk about mystery writing and learn tips and tricks to make your mystery better and to get readers to turn the pages. That's the whole point. So, today we're going to talk about setting, which is a total force in your mystery, and there's just so many ways you can use setting to enrich your story. Basically, setting is anything that is physical or time. So it's your whole time space continuum within your story. So there are many, many ways to use setting, and let's take a look at some of the elements of setting. But before I get to those, I want to talk about knowing your setting. It's really important to know your setting, because if a reader discovers a mistake, they're going to discount your whole story. So it's important to get the details right. Don't guess. Do research. Even if it's your hometown, make sure you know you've got a map in front of you so you know where everybody goes. If you're inside a house, you definitely have a floor plan so you know where everybody is in your story. It's just a big hint. Long ago, I was reading somebody's story, and it was set up near the North Pole, and researchers were arriving to go to a research station and help the team. And the team leader arrives at the airport in a Jeep and then proceeds to drive them hundreds of miles and several islands away to the base camp. And it was just physically impossible. There weren't ferries. There's no way to get from one island to another. And so you want to make sure that when you include your details, get them right. Okay, so elements of story, elements of setting. And welcome everyone. This is Mystery Monday, and I'm Sarah Altair, and it's where we talk about writing mysteries. So we're talking today about setting. I'm going to go over a few of the elements. There's just so many ways to include setting in your story. It's just a wonderful way to enrich your story, and it gives readers a sense of where they are in time and place. And many people think that setting is the place, but it includes so much more. So I wanted to go over a few of the elements of setting, and I think you'll discover that there's just so many ways to add details to your story. Okay, so the first one is what most people think of as setting. It's the location, the locale. It's the country, the region, the state, the town, the shoreline, the lakeside, the inner city, the countryside. It's the forest trail. It's the neighborhood. It's the street. It's the school. It's the county seat. It's any physical place in your story. So the sheriff's office, an ancient mysterious manor, a modern apartment, a seaside cottage, a suburban home, a kitchen, a bedroom, the patio, a dining room, a hallway, the kids' room. Wherever your characters go in your story, you need to provide the details. And so I think the first line of defense is don't have your characters floating in space, and give your reader, ground your reader in where they are in the story. It makes it real for them, and makes them feel like they're there and they're in the story, which is what you want. All right. So also there's seasons of the year, because time of year will provide details that impact the characters as they move through the snow, or swelter in the sun, or enjoy spring flowers, or look at the slanted light on autumn leaves. You put those details in there, and then holidays and festivals happen at certain times of the year, and they're often included in mysteries, so you can take great advantage of that, um, and give details of who's there and what's going on at these festivals. And then another thing that people often forget is the personal anniversaries of your characters. Is it a wedding anniversary? Is it a birthday? Um, is it the day their best friend died 20 years ago? So don't forget those personal anniversaries that impact your characters' emotions. And then as you move through the story, there's time of day, morning, afternoon, dead of night, dawn, dark. What's the light like? What can your characters see? What can they not see? Are they tired? Uh, all of these things are affected by time of day. And then as your reader moves through the story, you want to give them a sense of elapsed time. Is it a few minutes after or 3 days later? Uh, Give them a sense, or is it 6 months later? Um, Give them a sense of how the story's progressing in time. And especially if it's a long period of time, you want to let them know what happened in the interim between the last scene and the current scene. So you want to keep them in the time flow as well as giving them a sense of place. And then on a larger scale, there's the atmosphere, the weather, the temperature, and the lighting. These are all tangible elements that you can add to your story, and impact how characters are acting within your story. If it's winter time, are people indoors for the most part, or are they out and about? So latitude, altitude, are you high up in the mountains? Are you at sea level? Prevailing winds, is it windy? Is it a light breeze? So another way that you can enrich your story setting is with the overall atmosphere and climate. So this is a great way to give your reader a sense of where they are. Remember, your readers in real life can be far, far away from where your story is taking place. So giving them details about the climate will help your readers get a sense of your location. All right, and then also that sense of geography, and help readers understand the ecosystem of where they are, the flora and fauna, islands, as I mentioned earlier, how you get there and how you get to the islands, and the climate, all go together in the sense of place and the large place in your story. And also the big structures that can be around your characters, like dams and um, river diversions and bridges and ports and cities and other, give your readers details, make them feel like they're there. That's the whole point of putting setting in your story. And then another element of setting is the cultural environment. So social and political influences surround your characters, and they can also often provide obstacles for your main character. So culture and politics influence your story with connections about family rules or community involvement, um, slavery, freedom, cultural differences. Um, so all of these cultural elements and enlighten the sensibilities of your character and the way they interact with other characters. So these are the main attributes of setting to color your story. Depending on your story, other setting details such as population density or ancestral values from another culture can impact the story. So just be aware of everything that is around your character in the story. Great way to provide details. But I think the trick for the writer is integrating those setting details within the story. So if you don't know yet, info dumping and just having long, 3 pages of what it's like in this particular city, or what the weather's like, any of those things, don't do it. The craft of your writing is going to integrate the elements of setting into your story and illustrate how your characters, not only your detective, but all the other supporting characters, how they interact with the setting. Those long explanations that show how much you know, just cut them out, because they slow down the story, they slow down your reader, and they may actually quit reading your story. Even though you've got a great plot, if you plunk in those big chunks of info dump, they're going to stop reading. So here are some ways to integrate setting into the story, so that it's less likely that your reader will notice that you're doing setting and skip that part, or maybe even put your book down, which is the last thing you want. So, first of all, break up the description into small nuggets and sprinkle them throughout the story, even within a scene. Don't put all those setting details in one place. Just keep them separated. Add them into action elements between dialogue snippets, so they aren't all in one place. So they keep grounding your reader in the story without giving them this great big huge clunk of information. All right. And I think the easiest way to bring in those details is to create character integrations with segments of the setting throughout the story, scene by scene by scene. So from wiping a brow when it's hot, to shivering in the cold, to a long trail on a hike, or getting down to observe the body on a steep incline, changing from sidewalks that are cracked with weeds growing up to sidewalks that are smooth and clean. You're going to instantly let readers know that you've changed neighborhoods. So keep time passing with gentle hints about where the sun or the moon is, or no moon and stars. Um, keep your readers aware of how time is passing, and then create setting to echo the mood of your character's feeling at the moment. If the heat is overwhelming, that can echo how your detective is just, they can't figure it out. Everything seems like too much. So you can do that. And you can also frustrate your main character with any kind of hindrance from the setting, from stumbling over rough terrain to not being able to get somewhere because it's raining and the streets are flooded. You can always, the more you create conflict for your detective, the more interesting your story is. So you can certainly use setting details to give your detective a lot of problems. Okay, so, and then also you can create misunderstanding with cross-cultural details. Um, it's easy to do that. I actually studied cross-cultural communication way back in graduate school, and it's really easy if your characters are in one culture and the suspects are in a different culture to have people really misunderstand. Like in some cultures, it's considered impolite to look you in the eye, so it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's lying. Use those details to really enrich your story. So you can have slips, falls, sneezes, social faux pas in an unfamiliar culture, terrifying heights, dark caves, tornadoes, storms, rough waves, earthquakes, menacing clouds. Your setting will have enough detail to add to every scene. It's when you know your setting, you can add detail in every scene in your story. But I do have a caveat for, especially for beginning writers. Be careful with extra detail that feels unnatural. So your heroine's like teetering at the top of a 40-story building. So it's much more likely that she will think 40 stories than 404 feet. So even though you may know that it's 404 feet, skip the temptation to tell readers how smart you are. That's just a general guideline. Skip the temptation to show readers how smart you are. Your heroine, unless she's a total numbers freak, is going to think 40 stories rather than 404 feet. Otherwise, that 404 feet is going to sound unnatural. And anytime you sound unnatural, you jerk your reader out of your story, and you don't want to do that. So, the best I can tell you is to think about your setting, do the research, and then practice, putting those details inside the story than trying to jam them all in one giant, long, descriptive passage. Okay, I hope that helps. And then for anybody just joining, this is Mystery Monday, where we talk about writing mysteries. And we always have Ask Me Anything, and I do have a couple of questions today. And the first one is definitely an Ask Me Anything question for mystery writers. Okay, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but what is SEO for authors? Okay, that's a really great question. So overall, SEO is an acronym that stands for Search Engine Optimization, and that is optimizing anything on your web presence, from your website to social media posts to what you say about yourself on social media, optimizing your content to help search engines like Google and Bing understand uh, who you are. And as an author, that's very important. So you want to give details like what your genre is. If you're Mary Smith author, that's cool that you're an author, but actually search engines and anyone who might be reading your books won't know what genre you're in. So make sure you include really important details like that when you set up your description on every social media page and on your website. And then it helps to have um, what search engines call identity. You want to have the same identity wherever you are on the web. So your website, social media, YouTube videos, wherever you are, you want to have the same portrait, and you want to have an image of you that is full face so people instantly recognize who you are. This is not the place to put kitten pictures instead of your face profile. So little details like that. I don't want to get too deep because we could go on forever about search engine optimization. I think the best place for you to start is there's David Amerland wrote a wonderful book called SEO Help, 20 Semantic Search. I can't read. 20 semantic search steps that will help your business grow. And that's what you want to do as an author. So, I highly recommend that book. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the web about SEO and what to do about it. And SEO Help will really ground you in the basic fundamentals. And you'll be excited to discover that even though there are some elements of SEO that are technical, there's so much you can do on your own without being a web developer or any of those things to really help search engines understand who you are, what your genre is, and what your books are. So I'll put a link in the show notes to the book SEO Help, and that's a great place to get started. Let's see. That's a really great question, and I really appreciate it because it's never too early when you're writing your mystery. It's never too early to establish your presence and send a consistent message about who you are and the story that you write anywhere you are on the web. That's the basic essence of search engine optimization. Wherever a search engine finds you on the web, you want to have a consistent message. And that's kind of boils down to what it is. So that was a really great Ask Me Anything question. And I do think about it's never too early to start your web presence as an author. So even though your story may not be finished, you can start setting up your website and developing your social media presence. Thank you so much for that great question. Okay, here's one that's really targeted on mysteries. What's the difference between evidence, a clue, and a red herring? Okay. I know that it can be confusing. You will use them all to greater or lesser extent in your mystery. So evidence is the physical properties usually found at the crime scene. And this can include forensic evidence like blood spatter and DNA, fingerprints, bullet trajectory, and These physical evidence elements are quite prominent in many police procedurals. Now, and they are clues. So clues is kind of the big, anything that points your detective towards solving the mystery. So, but for people who write with amateur detectives and not police procedurals and law enforcement, clues can include all that physical evidence I just mentioned. But they also include what your detective learns from the suspects, which includes things like their body language, what they leave out of any answers they give to your detective, also physical items that they may leave or hide, any lies that are discovered, because amateur detectives don't usually have access to physical evidence, so clues are all they have to solve their mystery puzzle. Okay, so red herrings are things that appear as clues but aren't. They are false clues. And they lead your detective down a false trail and usually are not related to the murder, even though at the time they may seem they are. And they feel like a clue to the detective and your reader, but they don't lead anywhere. So when you're writing your mystery, really limit your red herrings. Don't try to show people how clever you are. I know I've said this before today, but once again, don't try to show people how clever you are by planting all these red herrings. Limit them to one or two, because otherwise you'll confuse your reader. Um, um, Red herrings can frustrate your detective and you want to build conflict, but that's just one element of conflict out of many of his interactions with other suspects and how he or she tries to solve the puzzle. So for red herrings, really limit it. Readers feel cheated when you try to trick them, and they will discover that you were trying to trick them, and one may not read this mystery, and they probably will never read another mystery by you. So limit your red herrings, one or two at the most. Okay, so thank you so much for the questions, and as always, I welcome questions from writers and also from readers of the Argolicus mysteries. If you have any questions about Argolicus or the setting, you can ask those as well. And then I had one wonderful thing happen this week. You never know when connections with other writers will bring something totally new. So mystery writer Rin Shell, who is in Australia, actually created 2 paintings based on the Argolicus mysteries, and then made a video of her painting and then talking about the Argolicus mysteries. So I was just absolutely thrilled and so honored that she did that. So if you'd like to take a look, I will also post a link to her video in the show notes. So once again, thank you for coming to Mystery Monday, and I hope you have fun playing with your setting details.